I'm in AI from my early high school, so this means from 80s, right? So I've seen ups and downs, right? So now it's kind of a big up, which might continue, or seems like it will continue. Despite some people are saying, well, this hype will go away. Most likely it won't that soon, right? So, and it's true, yes, in the last couple of years, maybe 2-3 years, there's this big discussion on AI and ethics and all these soft, let's say, social aspects of AI, which pretty much this conference is discussing about. So since the conference is about future of living, right? So I prepared like first topic a little bit about the future and how AI might help here, right? And in the second part, if I have time, I will talk a little bit more about how the efforts go in international organizations like OECD, UNESCO, Human Rights Institute, Council of Europe, and so on, European Commission, about regulating AI from different angles, right? So I have this on slides as well. So I have material for like hour and a half, but most likely I won't, you will stop me sooner, right?
You have the counter there. It would say to you when to stop.
Okay, yeah, so then you will have to physically bring me out, right, as well. I'm joking.
Pointing there.
Huh. Okay. What did I do now? It's complicated.
You have.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay.
This once and
Yeah. Okay, so the conference is about future, right? Future of living, right? So first obvious question is, what kind of futures do we have at all, right? It's not future, it's just future, right? If you try to systemize the futures we are, let's say, at least interested in, we could say these are the futures, right? So one, the middle one, right, is the projected future. This is what we usually say, well, this is the future, right? So this is something like default, something what we expect in a way, right? Then we have one above, it's a, let's say, plausible future, which it's definitely worth investigating or thinking about, which is like something what could happen, right? And then it's possible future as well, right? What might happen, right? It's less likely, but still might happen, right? And then preposterous future, this is kind of a future which most likely won't happen, right? Or at least we think it won't, right? And then we have also probable, right, future, and one which many people or everybody tries to talk about, preferable, what we would like to happen. And these things don't always overlap, obviously, right? So we always live in a current moment, and as time goes by, somehow the uncertainty kind of widens, right? And then we get all these different futures, right? Okay. Now, what can we say about this future in some kind of more analytic way, right? Okay, here's one graph I prepared along two axes, right? So the horizontal axis is phenomena which on the left side have known consequences, for which we would know most likely how it will influence our lives. And on the right side, there are phenomena which most likely we don't know what kind of consequences they will bring. And on the upper side, we have unknown phenomena, things which we don't even know they might happen, right? And on the bottom side, we have known phenomena, things which we know extremely well. Now, let's see some of them, right? Sports. This is the most boring thing in terms of future. Everything is determined, rules and so on. There's only this little small window who will win that particular game, either in tennis or football or whatever. This is known consequences, known phenomena, nothing surprising, and that's why people like it, actually, right? On the other side, right, daily politics, a little bit less known consequences, but pretty well-known phenomena, usual fights and so on, but basically nothing really dramatic, right, at the end. On the other side, aliens coming to Earth, right? So many people criticize me why I'm putting this, that this is unknown phenomena, unknown consequences. People say, well, we saw this all in the movies, right? So it's so well known. No, it's not, right? So it didn't happen, and we certainly don't know what kind of consequences this would bring. COVID would fit somewhere there. Sort of unknown phenomena to some degree, right? And consequences, as we see, right, are also not very clear. Right? AI today would be somewhere here. AI of the future would be somewhere there, right? Aging society, climate crisis, and so on. I won't go into each of them. Geopolitics, yes and no, right, in all directions, and so on, right? So in a way, when phenomena appears in our lives, right? So typically they start more like on the upper right corner, right? And then society, we as a society try to push this phenomena down to the lower left corner so that things become more deterministic, more just so that they don't surprise us too much, right? Okay, this is one possible view about the future or about phenomena which we experience, right? Okay, there's this one, I wouldn't even call it science, right? Let's call it an area of research or techniques, right? Which is called strategic foresight. I'm sure everybody heard about strategic foresight. So this is an area where people try to project the future or discuss the future, or at least plan or try to understand what will happen next, right? So effectively what this is, right? So it's a set of, mostly set of discussion techniques, right? Moderated discussions, how to extract know-how, feelings, beliefs, hopes from experts into, about the future, right? And then to get some narrative, which then maybe policymakers or strategists would sell them or use them for future decisions, right? So this is strategic foresight. So what's interesting about strategic foresight is that it's totally manual, right? So there's no technology inside or almost nothing, right? So now one of the questions is, can we help with AI, right? So to see the future a little bit better, right? Now, since we talk about AI, right, what is AI at the end, right? It's really a set of tools and techniques, nothing else, mostly related to data. A good part of AI is also dealing with encoded human knowledge, right? And especially the important thing is prediction and causality. What's the mechanics of things in our lives, right? On the other side, strategic foresight is about complexity of our lives. And these things fit very well. I won't go too much into details, right? But I would just point out one interesting concept which might be of relevance for discussion. So usually the statement is, whenever we talk about facts, right? Facts, usually the statement is, facts are of the past, right? Not entirely true, actually, if we look things a little bit closer, right? Facts are not always of the past. Now, we can say, or we can invent the concept facts of the future. What are facts of the future? So facts which we know already today, but will happen actually in the future, right? And most likely will happen, right? So here I listed like maybe 5 of them. So for instance, innovations, right? Innovations which are happening today, right? Today while we talk, right? While we talk, there will be at least 10, 20 AI papers published within this 1 hour. This is roughly the rate of how AI is being published these days, right? But inventions of today, right, will impact our lives in 5 to 15 years from now. So basically, this is a kind of effect of the future. So publications of today, which we can find on Google, which we can download, we can read them, and so on, will impact our lives in 10 to 15 years from now. In the same way as AI of today was invented 10 years from now. So this is typical innovation cycle, which, depending on the topic, is, as said, somewhere between 5. 5 is kind of a short one, right? It's more like 10 years, right? And sometimes up to 15 years, right? So this is kind of a fact of the future, and we cannot deny it. So, employments of today, for instance, if you look at the job postings, right? So we can get, if we attach to one of these services which are providing job postings, and we can get millions of them, right, per week. So these are facts of the future as well. Why? Because a company trying to employ somebody with certain skill set today, this is like something from the company side, a plan for the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years at least, right? This is also a fact of the future. So we cannot escape that kind of constraints. Then investments of today definitely are targeting 5 years from now, right? So it's again a kind of fact of the future. Even more interesting, right? Media influencers of today, right, are forming public opinion of not just tomorrow, but public opinion of, let's say, years from now, year or two from now. Public opinion is not something which you can change overnight, right? Despite it might look like, right? One tweet can change everything. Actually, it cannot, right? The general public opinion, it's formed and built up slowly, and all these influences we can track, right? So per second, we can collect like 10 to 20 articles from newspapers, and out of this, all over the world, we can actually see who's thinking what, and what is important, what's relevant, and so on. And education of today, so the skill set of today, so education of today is basically defining skill set of, let's say, 10 years from now. We cannot escape these futures, and we could find many more. So we know a lot about these possible futures, right? Okay, so much for introduction, right? This is one kind of interesting graph, right? So this is compilation of, it's part of OECD AI Policy Observatory, which we are building together with OECD. What you can see here, each bubble here is, so the online demo looks much nicer, but it's here I cannot operate with the web. So each bubble here is one country, right? Higher the bubble, richer the country, more to the right, more AI, bigger AI production in that country, right? And as you see, so the time goes from year 2000 to 2019, 12, right, 20, and you see the rise of China, right? So now 2000, you see that bubble on the bottom, how it speeds up and how it accelerates, and basically it's overtaking US and EU as two superpowers of AI. From, let's say, 10 years ago now, EU will be most likely the third one, not the second one, right? And US will be the second one. This is, I mean, we can investigate this way more, but this is like an example of a future which we cannot escape, right, related to AI. Okay, maybe this will be a little bit more technical graph, but again, it uses a huge amount of very diverse data, thanks to my friend and collaborator, Bozar, who calculated this. He's watching, by the way. So it's a graph how an innovation propagates through the ecosystem, right? So this is kind of a future which we can touch, see, and basically based on this kind of graphs, we can make our decisions, like European Commission can make decisions on the top of this kind of graphs. Okay, let's see. What we are observing here, we are observing just one innovation, let's say, which is called Google TensorFlow. This is a piece of software which everybody here in the room and outside is using several times per day. Maybe you're not even aware of this, but whenever you do Google search, whenever you do Google Translate, whenever you touch Google, basically this software runs in the back, right? So this software was announced in 2015. And you see, the first graph it's media. So Google started it with big media campaign, right? Which was high at the beginning, but then it kind of dissolved because it was TensorFlow doesn't need much media attention anymore, right? But what was followed, right? Immediately after media campaign, there was a uptake of the projects. These were, so here for the technical users, we have complete snapshot of GitHub, so we see pretty much all the open source projects in the world, right? And also this includes publicly funded projects like Horizon Europe and so on. You see the uptake of the projects, right? Immediately following the media campaign. What followed the projects, right? Projects deliver results. Okay, we see publications. You see how publications went up as a consequence of projects, right? After publications, we have patents. Some of the innovations get patented. You see the uprise of the patents, and what would be next, right? Jobs. How the job market took off, right, on that particular innovation. Now, this is an example how innovations propagate through the system, right? And this is one small, important but small fragment of AI, how it propagates. We have now several more of these dimensions, but let's stay here at this level, just to see how we can observe what's happening out there in the world, right? So, and we cannot, if we talk science fiction, there's no science fiction here. This is actually measured thing, right? Okay, I have a few more minutes. Maybe just switching the topic, right? So, a few years ago, in 2019, or 18 actually, I was part of OECD group, and I got this position to lead the working group on how to define AI, right? So I just wanted to say, since we discuss AI here, what is AI at all, right? And here I will present just, well, in this couple of minutes, how we came to the definition of AI, and this is the only definition of AI for which 44 countries voted. So the only politically adopted AI definition in the world, right? Which, by the way, was also taken by European Commission for AI Act, published in April this year, right? The same definition with one word correction. Okay, first, what is not AI, right? This is exactly opposite of AI, right? Usually, AI is something where machines are mimicking humans, right? So here you see the living being cat, right, mimicking the machine, right? So this is just I like it because it's non-definition, right? Okay, being more serious, right? So so these are definitions of AI, and there are many more in the literature, right? So this was like a starting thing, and we took as a baseline for the OECD and later EC definition of AI, this Henry Patrick Winston from '92, which is basically just one-liner, right? The study of computation that make it possible to perceive, reason, and act, right? So it's a short sentence, but tells a lot, right? So it has the feedback loop. So perceive, reason, and act. So these are the key elements of AI, not some cloudy definition or description, but this is really down to the point. This was taken as a baseline, and now 8 months of discussions, 44 delegations, I don't know, tens of meetings, we came up to these 3 sentences, right? So 8 months of work for these 3 sentences, which is now pretty much adopted. This is like OECD definition, but as said, so European Commission's definition is basically this one, plus a few more sentences, where let's read it together. So first, an AI, no word is here random, right? So an AI system is a machine-based system, so it's important, it's a machine-based, nothing else, that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, so human provides objectives, this is important, right? Make predictions, recommendations, or decisions, influencing real or virtual environment. Real is where you really affect the world, right? So if I'm if I throw something to anybody, then this would influence, right, the world. In the same way, AI is influencing the world. But also virtual environments, like game of chess and so on, right? And then it does so by utilizing machine and or human-based inputs. It's important, machine or human-based input to perceive again, right? Abstract, so there's a modeling, and use the model to impact the world. So these are three elements. It's a feedback loop. And the last sentence tells us about autonomy. There are various levels of autonomy. So sometimes machines actually do things by themselves. Sometimes we there's human oversight, right? I'm at the end with my time, but still, let me show this. The same definition basically has a little bit more structured view, right? And just to be very fast, having this kind of definition, right, in a structured way, then we can see all these different AI technologies like expert systems is one path through the definition. Standard machine learning, which everybody's doing today, another path, right? Autonomous driving would be another one, right? And all these fancy AI principles which are adopted in different organizations like OECD, UNESCO, Commission, Council of Europe, and so on, have different elements of this definition, are targeting different elements of this definition, right? So like robustness, risk management, transparency, and so on. So this is the point of having definition where actually things can be rooted somewhere, right? In the same way, bias, right? We have different biases, perception, technical, activation bias, three major ones, but there are many more, again, are related to some of these boxes, right? And these are organizations, now going back to your initial statement, so who is dealing with AI, ethics, human rights, and so on. So these are the organizations which are actually contributing the most at the moment, right? None of the documents, of the important documents is out there yet, right? But they will be in 22, right? So this is the list of documents, which I, again, won't go into details. And this is really the last slide. So where's the big problem when talking about AI? On one side, we have lawyers. So this is the upper part, right? Lawyers talk about philosophical, moral, legal concepts, right? On the other side, on the bottom, we have geeks like me, right? So, which obviously we understand things extremely well, but we talk in technical terms. And all these last couple of years of the discussions within these organizations actually to bridge that gap in terminology, concepts, and so on. And I think we are progressing well, but we are not there yet. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.